Hey guys!
Welcome to week 7. Today we're going to be talking about linguistics. So we've done kind of the big picture of ministry, and now we're going to kind of go back through some of those major steps as far as linguistics and literacy and Bible translation, things like that, and just spend a couple weeks doing different videos, a little bit more in depth on what each of those kind of looks like and what the purpose is. So today's linguistics, and Gerald's probably going to do a little bit more of the talking since he's the one that's kind of taken the extra time to study it, but just kind of what it is and what its purpose is in seeing a church, on to maturity prior to the ministry. So, yeah.
Yeah, so basically linguistics is just the study of language. So there's many realms of linguistics, but for us and our purposes, we focus on, taking a language that hasn't been written and how do you form an alphabet, how do you understand their grammar system, and so that we can translate the Bible into their language. So for us it's very practical. Linguistics that's sort of the realm that we're talking about. So an area that both of us studied was just phonetics and just speech sound. So understanding the different sounds that people can make and sounds that aren't even in English, and also just becoming more aware of the sounds that we do make in English. So there's a lot of different sounds that we make.
Speech sounds. And with phonetics, when we're breaking down a language, we use what's called the Ipa format, which is a very standard form.
International Phonetic Alphabet is what IPA stands for, and it's very widely known and recognized in just about any location in the world.
Yeah, so being able to go into a people group, we can use that when we're hearing new sounds in a language we don't know to be able to go, okay, well, we may not know exactly what they're saying, but we know that this is the sound that they're producing. So that's kind of what's really important about phonetics.
Yep. Yeah. So for me, this is where it gets a little more specialized, is taking, you have all these different sounds. How do you understand what they're actually thinking those sounds are? So like in English, we have PH and F. They make the same sound phonetically, but we have two different ways of representing it. So there's lots of different things like that are all throughout the language, in English, but then in every single language around the world. So how do we break down the different sounds that we get?
And that's called phonemics. So there's phonetics, which is breaking down speech sounds, but then phonemics is how the speaker hears the sounds that they're making. So like what he was saying with the PH and things like that, or different words like the word ladder and butter, we're making the same sound, but one we spell with the D, one we spell with the T, and that's because we as the speaker are viewing them as two different symbols, but they're technically the same sound, if that makes sense. So phonemics and phonetics go hand in hand together.
Yep. And then when we are able to understand the phonemics, then we can start thinking about forming an alphabet. And that's when we're forming an alphabet, we want to be very in tune with the national language and then the government officials over us, as oftentimes they put restrictions because they want the people in a different language to be able to, when they move into a city, be able to read the national language very well. So it's sort of trying to merge two different languages and how you would understand their symbols, and
having symbols that still represent the sounds that they're making in their language to create an alphabet for them, but also making sure that it's transitional enough to go into the national language, like what he was saying. And that's really important for the people, just to have that, the word I'm looking for, like leg up in society. Like they can feel proud of what they're presenting because it is more similar to the national symbols that you might find as we're creating an alphabet. So grammar is a huge part too of linguistics.
Yeah. So when we start thinking about grammar systems, the way that we communicate ideas is just so different depending on the language. So in English we say, I ride the bike, but in another language it might be the bike, I ride, and you might not even have that that could all be condensed into one word. Just how sentences are even made up can be completely different depending on the language.
Yeah, and that's super important, obviously, for creating just a Bible translation that is readable and understandable to them, is taking the time in linguistics to break down how they're thinking about things, how they process their information and their speech to be able to create an accurate Bible translation.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and another just major thing is when we start getting to discourse analysis and understanding, okay, there's different little characteristics of how we talk, that we talk one way when we're talking about a fictional story. So once upon a time, that's like a key note when we're talking about a fictional story. That's going to be hopefully happy. But yeah, we just have these different parts of our longer speech that are also part of just what we need to study, because otherwise, if we're communicating the gospel and we're telling all these stories about creation, and these people are thinking, oh, this is a really cool story, but is it true? And we want to be communicating in a way that they understand that this is truth, this is God's word, and we're not messing up in how we're telling God's story.
Yeah, because just like Once Upon a Time for us triggers the imagery of it being a made up story, there's going to be other things for them in their discourse and their grammar and their language structure that communicate, stories or things that are true or things that are going to be funny. Like there's different things that prompt that in their mind. So those are also things that they have to be able to understand as part of linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a short synopsis of some of the parts that are part of linguistics.
Yeah.
Gerald spent from May of 2020, that's when we technically graduated, until December, taking an extra linguistics course that just focused on linguistics. And part of it was even going to Oklahoma, where he worked with the Cherokee Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to use some of the skills that they've been practicing and breaking down other languages all over the world, and then put it into practice in a live way with the Cherokee language, which is really cool. But there is so much time and things that go into it that are hard to kind of explain over a video, but those are kind of some of the points that flow with linguistics and the importance of it. I mean, that's going to be huge in just getting an accurate Bible translation and doing teaching in a way that is presentable and the people are going to be able to understand.
Yeah, and it can just speed up the whole time that it takes to learn a language if you can break it down into understandable parts and pieces. So yeah, that's just a little brief synopsis of what linguistics is, and
Yeah, so next week we hope to be focusing on, or maybe not next week, it might be in 2 weeks. We'll do a life update kind of next week, and then the following week will be on literacy. It's just the importance of it, kind of how that works in a people group, and all those little details. So anyway, thanks guys for joining.
Yeah, thank you guys.